Hi, I'm Kate, the creative director of Calling Card Books, and welcome to Power of Storytime. Every Wednesday at noon, we read from some of our kids' books, and then on Fridays, we'll occasionally go live at 5 p.m. Pacific time to speak with authors and read from other books. And today, we have joining with us Sean Minster, who's the author of What Goes Unseen and Other Tales from Afar. So, thanks for joining us, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. And one of the things we wanted to talk about is just today we got some judges' feedback. We entered What Goes Unseen in the Independent Book Publishers Awards, Benjamin Franklin Awards, which had over 1,700 entries and is one of the A-list indie book awards. And we got some really good feedback from the judges, and I wanted to read a couple of those. So the first one said, "The stories are ethereal and scary, sometimes fun. It might be something best read during the daylight, long before bed." Which I appreciate that they were that scared by the stories.
So, yeah, no, I appreciate it too.
Yeah, I mean, you probably don't want to read Boogeyman right before you go to bed, because then you would wonder what might be hiding under your bed.
That's true. Yeah, it's kind of the point, I suppose. Was written in the wee hours of morning when I couldn't get to sleep, wondering what was lurking under my bed. So, not one to read if you want to go to bed soon.
Yeah, so now you get to make others wonder what lurks under their beds. And another one said, "Adventure and mystery mingle with a bit of darkness to keep the story moving along. It's a quirky and imaginative book that bends and twists with each story." I like that one a lot because there's definitely a lot of imagination, and there's such a variety between the stories. And we're going to read from Girl in the Mountain today, but what inspired that story in particular?
Girl in the Mountain?
Yeah.
So, what inspired it was, I was kind of, I don't know if bored is the right word, but tired, fed up with the humdrum of every day, just hitting the grindstone, going from job to job to job, and I wanted an excuse to adventure, to just go off to some magical rainforest where creatures fought and had powers, whatever. I wanted to see some action, so I wrote a story that had all those things and just whisked myself away while I was stuck in the city.
Yeah, it's got all the kind of a little bit of a Jungle Book sort of vibe to it as well, and almost creation.
And that was definitely one of the inspirations. The newest Jungle Book movie came out at that time. I think it was like 2015, something like that. It's a few years back now, and I watched it, and yeah, that was definitely fresh in my mind when I was writing this. And I think I point that out introduction or something like that. So, yeah, got my imagination running. One of my favorite childhood stories. Brought so much to life.
Yeah, and there are a lot of like tricksters and kind of things that seem like they're almost from creation myths or maybe like Indian lore. Were you inspired by any of that at all?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of just picked and choose from all the huge plethora of early myths, I guess. So there's it's primarily from Indian lore, but then there's also a little bit of Greek in there. There's a dash of Japanese, and then the rest of it just kind of came from this head here. Just by maybe I saw an advertisement as I was riding by, and that made it in.
Nice. And you've got so many different stories and so many different characters. Is there any one story or any one character that you like identify with the most, or that's kind of like your baby that you're the proudest of? Not that you can judge them all against each other.
Yeah. It depends on the day. It depends on the mood I'm in. Today, I think Girl in the Mountain is my favorite. So hopefully the listeners in for a good treat here. Yeah, I like it. I think it's the most fun, the most action packed. I identify with the most. That's, I mean, there's like in the first story of or the second one, the Great Hodag Hunt. It's a bunch of kids in the forest. It's like summer vacation. They're trying to hunt a hodag. They're trying to catch one. So maybe that group as an ensemble is the truest to who I was as a 13-year-old. Kid in the woods trying to catch an animal or something.
That one feels very universal as someone who lived with like a forest sort of deal in my backyard. I went through a lot of the same. Mine personally was pretending to be Pocahontas instead of hunting hodags because we didn't have that local lore. But there's something about being a kid and just messing around in the forest and bringing all of your stories to life. That's really fun. That story really captures. And all of the art in the book was done by your sister. What was it like working with her, collaborating with her to get the artwork done?
Yeah, it was great. It was the easiest thing to do. I said, here's some stories, read them, draw what you see, and like what would be a good cover art for each of these. And she sent them back and hardly had any critiques. Like, yeah, no, that's perfect. I think she captured all of them very well and got to the heart of it. Came up with images that fit. So yeah, it was great. It was fun to see some visual life brought into what otherwise was just words on a page. Yeah, and it was really fun that she was able to come out to the book launch here in Sacramento. We've got the picture up of her with all of her artwork at the event, and it was neat getting to see her there with it all. Yeah, it was awesome. So she lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm from as well, and a couple thousand miles away. Family doesn't get to visit all that often, so it's the perfect excuse to come out. Hey, you're part of a book. It's being launched. Come celebrate. So it was awesome. Yeah. All right. Let me see what else do I have. Well, I guess if you don't have anything else you wanted to say, we can reading. I know you've been practicing some voices for these different characters, and we're excited to see them. Because when we had Michael on, he did some fun voices for the animals in his book. Yeah, practicing a bit. We'll see. That might need a little tweaking yet, but part of the fun. There's really not a ton of dialogue, like going back reading through. There is here and there, but it's really just a small span of pages that actually has any talking. The rest is just description and action. So, let's get to it. All right. So, we'll be doing Girl in the Mountain. Girl in the Mountain. This tale shall take us west, far, far west. To rugged terrain of rolling green hills stretched across the land, ruffled by ancient rainforests. Alone, and deep within that overgrown expanse, there lived a mountain where the wilder women once roamed. Now, most would say a mountain sits or rests or merely exists in some spot. But this mountain lived. Of that, there is no doubt, except to those unacquainted with its majesty. This tall, proud mountain, dressed in the deepest emeralds and richest jades, though its crown glittered ever white with Huron snow. A deep, jagged, crumbly crack partitioned the mountain in two. The larger piece contained the peak, and the smaller made up about a third of its total area. Hidden by a mountain standard, this crack offered a formidable path to any creature who might want to traverse it. Few did. It was an angry crack with jutting walls, making it impossible to see the bottom from any ledge. To understand this mountain, you must first know of the wilder. In particular, you must first know of one wilder by the name of Khelreesh. Her people roamed that land since the first animals appeared. Some say because of the first animals. The wilder women acted as their protectors, wilders, and were even described as rulers over the animals, though they made no such claims. They were a fair but fierce lot, gentle as a summer breeze until provoked. Then they were a hailstorm. A knowledgeable breed of keen trackers and hunters, the wilders followed the motions of animals through study as much as instinct. But what they were truly known for was their mastery of all things mechanical. Their people understood better, perhaps they understood plants better, perhaps they understood themselves. It was even rumored that every few generations, a wilder who learned to speak of the plants would crop up. The garden surrounding their den, one could call it a garden, flourished with the finest fruits, vegetables, herbs, vines, barks, lichen, and mushrooms, and jungle and so on. No definite sections partitioned the garden, other than a small nursery, but all was purposely placed. The vegetation mingled with its neighbors in a symbiotic splendor, such that it was difficult to tell where the garden ended and the forest began. Plant life simply enriched the Eden around the den, gradually decreasing back to the jungle baseline, farther out. These women were not the only great denizens of this enchanted forest. Paupau, the ancient mountain leopard, claimed his territory in those parts. The Abjure Dolmen, who wore a tree as his home, rasps off the bark, also resided in the hills of that land. He was not to be confused with the dryads of Khelreesh, nymphs of the oak and ash trees, whose temperaments were far more playful. In lakes and mud pits, the regal serpents danced and devoured. But ever in the river, that was home to the great river spirit Paupau, who was no fan of the surface trees. Many great beings called that land home, especially in the days of old. It's been said that the air itself was such a figure, bald and eternal twinned cloud London, but not many still believe this. To tell the story in full of how this mountain came to live begins with time itself, but we will skip the history lesson in favor of a more manageable tale. We'll begin with the great Paupau chase that entangled the lives of Khelreesh, the wilder women, and the ancient mountain leopard, Paupau. Over rolling plains and into the thick forested hills wandered a many-pawed Paupau, the Paupau shrews. The creature bustled and stomped where it pleased, leaving in its wake churned vegetation and earth ripe with the fruit of its loin. A bear on its hind legs couldn't scratch this creature's back. It was a thick, long tangle of faceless comfort that legs seemed to grow from and disappear into. The hairs themselves wriggled and stretched with their owner's movement. For its size, the beast's speed was fierce. For all of its discretion, one could not deny that it left a delightfully succulent gift in its wake. Paupau's. The nature of this seed sower was indiscriminate, however, and indeed blind to the world around him. Though his bulk, until now, allowed him to commit these transgressions unchallenged, few enjoyed the cost of his company. The many-pawed Paupau grasped and turned and tilled about, knowing only scent and sound and the feel of the forest's form before it was trampled to Paupau's. The forest stirred at his presence. Rabbits tunneled out of sunken holes, and birds flew from snapped vines. Atop her vantage point, far displaced from her tribe, the lone wilder woman took notice. Khelreesh stood tall in a lookout stance, mouth slightly agape, revealing the pronounced canines of her kind. Humid air made the sun gleam off her hazelnut skin, and left a slight frizz in the dark, wavy hair atop her head. She carried a pouch tight to her back, knife strapped to her leg, and held a fat, chalky ball wrapped in thick, browning leaves. That day she had been searching for Paupau, known by the wilders to stab any cut or gash imaginable. One had to be careful with her. Too much of its powder in or on the body could dehydrate a person to death. The root's magic was powerful, found only in the canopy of the dense bramble on the far side of the mountain. The Paupau's path, the tugging heart told her, struck straight for that death. She wouldn't be able to warn the others in time, but she might slow the Paupau long enough at the right moment. Tucking the glove book neatly within her pouch, Khelreesh made one last scan of the horizon. With a branch swing, dip, scramble, and a drop, she landed back in her darkening belt. This tunnel offered a firm footing, despite being made mostly of brand-new branches. The occasional jut of rock and dirt and plateau broke up the sea of sticks, but mostly it was twisted thorn. After a few moments of hurried crawling beneath barbed brush, she made a quick left and headed forward onto an earthen platform. A little further and she plunged left again, this time poking straight through the thorny wall with her needle and claw. Weaving and wiggling, she worked her way impressively far from the stretch. Again, she found herself above bramble and made her way a little further. After a length, she kicked down once, twice, jumped into a stomp, plummeted. Khelreesh first caught herself when her feet last touched, only long enough to steady her vision, shifting her weight as she snapped the branch. A heave left her just close enough to a tree jutting off the cliffside. Again, she grabbed for a branch, or two, or three, or four. They were coming fast. She borrowed only enough energy from each to soften her descent. At last, she came to a dull thud on the ground, and after 3 steadying breaths, took off in pursuit of the Paupau. Meanwhile, the Paupau was getting much closer to another great mountain dweller. Unusually inattentive and sluggishly sleepy, Rockpaw napped atop his favorite tree and only friend. The massively trunked, thick-bowed behemoth towered above all that it surrounded. Patches of timeless white flesh shone smooth beneath the thick, pulpy bark. This arbor harbored an ecosystem unto itself, rich with life from its roots to its shoots. A paw's length separated the beast from the behemoth when Rockpaw came to. The cunning cat wore an onyx-spotted coat, laced with dark topaz. His tail billowed like a thick tuft of fennel, allowed for effortless balance. Mighty teeth and half-retracted claws jeweled the otherwise unaccented feline. The steel-hard muscle, though bulging, was lost in the consuming darkness of its shadowy form. On all fours, his shoulder met that of a red deer. With a twitch of his whiskers, he was up in an alert crouch, and with a great thud, he was shaken to an even lower stance. The Paupau flailed and wrecked, denting the tree with a single blow, as if it were wicker. Rockpaw watched, aghast and unbelieving, through the second blow. By the third, he leaped and landed, and as the fourth flail flew, so lunged the leopard toward the only discernible sensory organ he could find, the Paupau's powerful sniffer. A thrashing ensued. The tree was bent by the beast's hollow boot, and the beast was gashed by Rockpaw's razor claws. Rockpaw carried his momentum down the beast's snout, but was flung aside by the freshly injured brute. From deep within the Paupau's mane, a massive, toothy grin emerged out of the seamless pelt. Rockpaw did not return the gesture, or wait for any pleasantries. He charged, staying low while watching the beast react. After baiting a response, the leopard slashed at a forepaw. Then, avoiding a stomp, he nicked a back ankle. Another parry, and it was obvious these cuts were futile. The beast seemed to be all muscle when attacking, and all fur when struck. It was time for another approach, and that meant playing Rockpaw's favorite game. A few more pricks, and the creature started becoming annoyed. Brown hair began to dust the arena. Its owner took the offensive. It took the entirety of Rockpaw's might to maintain his balance as the beast lumbered and stomped. With all his finesse, he slowly turned the Paupau around, batting it down the darkening grove which lay past the great tree. When both were far enough in, its magic took hold, and the game began. They had entered the gauntlet of the legendary leopard. Tall, sharp shoots jutted out of the ground, crisscrossing and covering the sky. Shadows drifted about, drawing figures and forms in the peripheries of one's vision. The spooky spectacle of spears was menacing to most prey, but especially effective on this one. A few blunt steps beyond the grove, and the Paupau became tangled, its fur snarled and snagged. It was not accustomed to being trapped. Its place was strong with magic. Smelling its adversary creating distance only maddened the Paupau in its predicament. The beast burst through the pins that held it and bristled onward through their length. By the time it reached the clearing, the beast had shrunk significantly in size, its coat knotted and torn. That little cat would be sorry if ever the Paupau caught up to him. With a full body shake, the Paupau ruffled out some loose sticks and hairs, but it did little to tame its aggravated mood. It lumbered on, crunching the odd boulder as it went. Wafting ahead was first a trickle and then a torrent of the wonderfully vexing scent that was the mystic many mud pits. This savory sensation tormented the Paupau. Such a lovely fragrance carried to it on the breeze, but the mud completely covered the scent of rock pop and all else. The pursuer was now truly blind. No other choice, the Paupau plodded forward, eventually slinking into the shady mud. At first an impedance, the cool caress of enveloping earth was incredibly relaxing, rejuvenating. After a minute in the mire of muck, there came a fishy, slimy scent mixed with the stale death escaping a wicked mouth from deep below. A single swish confirmed the presence, and then it was gone. By the far side of the pungent pool, the Paupau was revitalized. It slobbed from the depths, wearing the fragrant filth on its fur. A whisper of wind tensed the beast, almost in time to deflect the ambush from above. But the blow was struck. Rockpot disappeared in a puff of fur, only to reappear moments later for another bout. This time, Paupau was ready. Striking first and hearing the satisfying thud of Rockpot against the canyon wall. The Paupau charged, hurtling its body forward to finish the job. Its massive mid-paws crashed down, meeting only rock below, now slightly cratered. Rockpot had to be hurting, but could apparently take force greater than his form. This last blow should have left him broken. After a long, tense pause, the Paupau continued cautiously. The gauntlet's next leg took ages to reach. On and on the Paupau stalked, sniffing every which way as it went. The fierce sun crept steadily into the sky, rays radiated off the canyon wall, and the drifter's steps began to drag. Not long after, its sniffer started to dry. The heat did its best to drowsily distract, but the Paupau kept a firm nerve. Still, the relative silence and fading scent left it anxious. It knew Rockpot lurked close, waiting only for its guard to drop. It began to feel, quite literally, as if it were walking on eggshells. Then the Paupau started to stiffen. What the Paupau could only crunch, but not see, were shells, all right, but not of any eggs. It walked through a garden of stone creatures, preserved perfectly to their last moment. Some looked panicked, coming to rest amid a final, desperate twist. Others had curled cozily into themselves, accepting the harsh hand that was far past enduring. Still, most lay tipped and cracked, not from the Paupau, but more likely Rockpot. These casts wore holes bored with the intent so that some creature might dine on their well-protected yolks. The Paupau didn't have to see these premonitions to know what fate had befallen him. The mud, which had so recently livened the beast, now entombed him. That magnificent muck was hardening to stone at an alarming rate. More than that, it appeared to be taking on weight. Rubbing against the canyon walls, the Paupau tried desperately to remove its tightening straitjacket. That seemed only to hasten the effect, smoothing out the edges in the process. Depths grew harder and harder to take. In a last-ditch effort, the beast flexed every fiber of its being, pushing out with every paw seen or hidden. The result was a mini-explosion. High-velocity rock bits blasted outward in every direction. The Paupau was left looking like a porcupine's pincushion, studded with stone. This explosion gave the Paupau a
detailed map of its entire surroundings, written in the sounds of pebble mills. Mingled within this clatter was a stifled yelp, followed by the scent of blood. One of its projectiles had found its mark. It was time to follow its shot. The Paupau's pace quickened, and wished foremost to catch its antagonist, but also to escape the brutal sun that baked it so. The rock coat weighed down, but he had lost so much fur that it was more or less a wash. Muscle was traded for armor. After a few minutes galloping, the beast collided head-on with a stone pillar. Its rock helmet crumbled further as the pillar toppled, staying home. Not a step further, and the Paupau reached another pillar, this one unbudging. A sidestep revealed several more, and to the other side was an arch. This labyrinth held fast, but was too narrow to allow the Paupau inside. Some consideration later, the Paupau placed a paw atop the arch. Another braced against the canyon wall, and two more found pillars before the rest were lifted off the ground. There was a lot of feeling about involved, like a spiderling discovering its legs. Slowly, the beast made it atop the maze and began forward delicately. Below, the leopard stalked in safety, nursing its wounds and plotting the next move. This Paupau was an admirable foe, a hard nut to crack with more bite than Rafa had anticipated. He was hurt worse than he had been in many years, but that didn't mean his time was up. There was a trick or two left in Rafa's arsenal. He just had to be sure they weren't wasted. In the meantime, Khelreesh had made her way to the great tree and was observing its sorry state. Branches and fur were scattered across the area. Littered about this mix were hundreds of seeds, some already beginning to germinate. As she surveyed the scene, Khelreesh knelt, absent-mindedly pruning a dead leaf from a nearby fern. Grabbing a tuft of fur, she noted it was already degrading from a lush, dark strand into rich, peaty substance. The fallen branches were iron-hard, but pliable as balsam. She knew, of course, of the tree yacht's magnificence and of the malice-filled creature that called it home. A bold guess told her that this creature might call her ally, only for today. Her guess was as much a hope as anything, but she saw precious few options. Circumventing this domain in hopes of alerting her tribe was plausible. Rockpot could hold the Paupau in his gauntlet. But that plan was incredibly risky, and left a lot of time for much more destruction. There were a few friends, some strong, she could look to in the area. None were so strong as the combined power of her tribe, however, and certainly none that looked promising to men the Paupau. Her choices whittled down, she stepped around the great tree and beyond the grove in direct pursuit. Darkness first met Khelreesh, but as her eyes reacquainted with the light, she found herself in a tangle of towering spikes. The challenge here was nothing great. She did not feel pursued herself, though she knew whose hunting grounds these were and how dangerous it was merely being present. Keeping a cool head, she passed through the bamboo without terrible trouble, not about to be frightened by the ominous ambiance. Tufts of copper hair were nestled high in the spikes and littered the ground amidst broken shoots. The beast's apparent struggle here bred plainness that were playing out before her now. Khelreesh followed the mile-wide trail onward. A scurry sounded to her left, and the rustling brush pile produced a forest mouse. The critter made a frantic dash across her gate, weaving around the fallen foot. Not far behind chased a ferret fox, who was bumped off balance by Khelreesh's next stunted stride. An angry hiss switched to a whimper with one swift kick, and the ferret fox ran timidly away. Khelreesh hadn't meant to bump the creature, nor did she care if it had caught the mouse. He would not, however, be disrespected by some runt that may not even realize was under her protection. Perhaps she would lunch on some ferret fox the next time they passed their paths across. Bending momentarily, Khelreesh deftly propped up a small flower trampled by the ferret fox. Crack! She jumped back as a spike fell angrily from its bunch. what she had seen in the bamboo, there should have been far more seeds and hair ahead. Only a strand at a time. It was as if the gauntlet had erased her from the scene, or, rather, erased the scene from around her, which was unnervingly puzzling. Unless the beast had climbed over the canyon wall, however, there was only one way it could have gone. There wasn't a scratch, crumble, or hair to suggest it climbed up. Forward she went. After a spell, she found herself staring down a collection of mighty stone columns clustered into a nearly impenetrable wall. The obvious path onward was by way of a well-formed arch. More obvious was the fallen column that had made for an easy climb atop this clutter. Before entering the labyrinth, Khelreesh decided to have a peek at her pathway. From atop the pillar, the route was clear, or the start of it was anyway. Making her own entrance, she would pass two gaps on her left, before taking the third, following the second right, ignoring a few minor bends, and from there, things got hazy. Beyond should not have been too far for her to see from the vantage point, but the stone left a shimmer in the air that was likely the maze's devising. It was not meant to see beyond that. Climbing down inside the maze, Khelreesh decided to be content with her head start. A few turns later, she was beyond the scope of her knowledge. Several more, she was decidedly lost. Twice she climbed a wall just to find the sun and keep her direction. Most dead ends were decorated in a clutter of bones, but the barren labyrinth did not remain so forever. Panic shrubs began to dot the path. A shrew pattered across a wall. Khelreesh even spied a cobra peering out from a crack. Curious, shriveled berries draped from a blue-hued bush, and later she noticed a lone white flower blossoming from a great bulbous root. That is when she was met by the two-faced monkeys. Quibbling as the monkeys descended, Khelreesh kept her back to a wall, standing her ground as they settled around the builder. Stout creatures stood waist-high next to Khelreesh. Dark, tan skin on their paws and faces contrasted with dusty white fur, which seemed far too insulating for the labyrinth-worn climate. Their heads had triangular quality about them. At first glance, it looked as if a long nose stretched down the center of their face. A second glance showed this to be a simple divide, on either side of which sat a face, dangling slightly outward. In moments she was surrounded by a troop of 8 strong. 16 pairs of pupils examined and considered her presence. She met eyes with the alpha monkey, and after a steady head turn, its second face met her eyes again. Rumor told that each face saw different fruits, just as different personalities can take separate lessons from the same story. Both faces were stern, with wrinkles of an intent gaze around the eyes, not telling of their owner's thoughts. She struggled not to stare at the two faces, even though that was exactly what she was doing. More so, she tried to hide the comparison she was making, so she might know which face to address at what time. The difference was subtle. A quick glance showed other monkeys with far greater left-right dimorphism. Even still, a glimmer of maternal concern peeked through the cracks of the monkey's right expression. The left balanced this with an equally slight brutality. After they had taken each other in, the monkey spoke from its left mouth, in the common tongue of the forest. "What brings you to our corner of the mountain? How long have you been here that Rockpaw no longer pursues?" Not wanting to be rude with her first words, Khelreesh responded to the monkey's left face by default. "I have not seen Rockpaw for many seasons, and never, to my knowledge, has he pursued me. I might be pursuing him now," she added, looking Lefty square on. "But that is only through happenstance. My real target is the many-pawed Paupau of Gibraltar. The creature has been terrorizing this mountain. I hope to stop it before my home is trampled as well." "How have you come to know the origin of such a beast?" asked Leftface, surprised but not unsteady. "The birds speak to those who will listen," replied Khelreesh, "or those willing to pay a treat. Some travel the world over. This creature matches a description I heard some moons back. I can't imagine there are too many beasts like it on this earth.
And just how do you plan to stop such a beast? Asked Blackface.
What concern is that of yours? She retorted.
We saw the creature lumbering over our maze not long ago, explained the Two-Face. You are an insect to it. With your first strike, you would be squashed as it turned to face you. If your plan is to be killed by the Paupau, we would just as soon eat you ourselves. So I ask again, what is your plan to defeat the Paupau?
Khelreesh kept her gaze on Leftface, pausing to collect her thoughts before speaking. Rockpaw battles the beast now. I will come to his aid.
Rockpaw is out of his league, the monkey half jeered. The forecast's been beaten. He fights with a hot head this time and isn't thinking clearly. All he does now is bait the Paupau to his own resting place. What do you offer that he hasn't already supplied?
Khelreesh leaned back on the rock wall, complacent to the monkey's threatening stances. Her eyes went distant, thinking intently about this new information. He hadn't fully formed a plan, and bumbling into the Paupau without thought would do little good for her tribe. A few moments passed before Khelreesh returned. Her expression softened, and she locked onto Rightface. Intrigued, the monkey's neck craned, positioning its right face on her before settling into a stare. Khelreesh spoke. I can offer nothing of myself to the situation that Rockpaw has not already brought. She sensed the troop tense as if ounce, but continued. He is cunning, fierce, and far stronger than I. Alone, I have little to nothing to his attack force. But with you, I am not alone.
The palpable tension steamed to a growl among the infantry, but their leader patiently waited while Khelreesh continued.
The forest is being destroyed. The entrance to your maze has toppled. Would you show a blind eye as everything around you turns to chaos? I am not asking you to fight, but if you were to set a trap, our forest might stand a chance.
Rightface answered with a harsh pointedness. You would have us construct a cage to keep in a monsoon? Dig a hole to hold an earthquake? And of yourself, you offer the lofty role of bait? We should turn tail now, take cover, and fill our bellies while we wait for the storm to pass. Or are you too dense to know the futility of fighting the elements themselves?
Perhaps this is not a lesson I've fully learned,
Khelreesh spat right back.
though us builders have learned many things. We know how to grow great stone claws and pluck them for our own.
She started, feeling the knife at her hip.
We can let fly fierce stingers that come to rest deep within the mark of our choice. And we know a fair few secrets of horticulture.
Of what? Asked Rightface, curiosity peeking through its acrimony.
Horticulture, she repeated. The use of plants, particularly for their unique properties, be those medicinal, poisonous, or otherwise.
And just what plant was it you planned to poison the Paupau? Returned Rightface.
In a single, punctuating action, she turned to Leftface and gave her response. The red flower.
Immediately, chatter broke out amongst the troop. Their leader kept all eyes on Khelreesh a moment longer, then turned and took a few steps to confer with the group in private.
Khelreesh waited patiently. The plan itself was a long shot. If the troop didn't agree, there went any chance of the Paupau being stopped, let alone her hopes of seeing the end of this day. As she stood considering all this, Khelreesh nudged a rock with her foot so that it perfectly shaded a small pricker plant. A minute later, the monkeys ambled back to the wilder, leaning against the canyon wall. Rightface stated their response.
You will teach us to cultivate the red flower, and we will make sure it finds the Paupau.
I will teach you to cultivate it, but I will be the only one to see the red flower blossom. That step is too dangerous for you to know. It may be too dangerous for us wielders to know, but we cannot help that now. So it is our sacred knowledge to protect. There was a pause, and Rightface looked as if to speak. Khelreesh continued with thought. You have seen how the wind carries the red petals where it likes. This grows like no other weed in existence. We shall keep the flower put and bring the Paupau to it, hoping its poison doesn't spread. Their chief internalized the information before reluctantly agreeing. The secrets of the red flower were long guarded by the wilders and desired by every creature that had ever heard or seen its power. It was no small deal they had reached. More trusting of their new ally now, Greyface offered some explanation. This plan may work, and that is what matters most.
Those who know our history will call our ancestors, our single-faced ancestors, having passed through the ground. We were thousands strong in our migration. A plague of the land had overtaken our home.
It withered and died. In our travels, we saw many strange things. We learned secrets not unlike the wilderness. Then we came to Paupau. That place is wicked, a pit of despair and rank chaos. Fumes rose from the cracks that would choke out our own, but gave strength to a certain sort of wretch the sun daren't even touch. Giant, monstrous creatures roamed about that would liken the Paupau to a mud bean. Those did not bother us much. We were ants to them. We were their ants' ants. But when they battled, the ground shook, and hundreds were lost to a step and tail flick. The monster hardly paused to brush the pulp from its foot. Khelreesh could tell the monkey was lost in a memory that was not its own. Time was pressing, but she needed the monkeys if this plan was to work. Besides, she had gotten caught up in the tale herself, and any background on the Paupau could prove useful. For now, she would listen with a concerned expression that noted both interest and sympathy, but she could not afford to let them drone. Greyface, who hadn't paused for Khelreesh's mental aside, continued in the history lesson. The magic there was vast. It would drown your mind if you were not careful. Navigation was impossible, but by the numbers we entered with, some were bound to be lucky. The luckiest of us all, traveling with the least lucky, and the homuncula, a trickster against nature itself. We know of none who could speak to the sorcerer's original form, but our ancestors know the disturbed creature to be a cobbled creation of its own devising. That thing stole from others the parts it wanted, though rarely did it kill. Rather, the mystic would rearrange those it took from, and patch the tattered remains with whatever or whoever it fancied. The homuncula borrowed our bodies in the most wretched of ways. Those of us left with any recognizability were spliced together in the most intrusive union imaginable. Two minds were brought to one, with only a window to manifest the remnants of one's former self. All were lost that day. You were born again. The rest met such unsavory fates that recounting it would be a dishonor to their memories. The brow is a gash of turmoil that need never bleed into the rest of this world. The Paupau may be the noblest beast to have ever crawled out of that immoral stain, but its original sin is too great. The balance we live in cannot cope with such evils about, and so the Paupau must be destroyed. We will help you at all costs, in remembrance of our ancestors' strife. I am sorry to hear the misfortunes your people have had to endure, Khelreesh spoke sincerely. I cannot begin to comprehend the savageries met by your kind. Your aid today will not go forgotten by me or my tribe, if we survive, that is. And that is a big if. Now, what exactly was the plan you had in mind? Khelreesh spoke at some length, explaining the conditions in which the red flower grew and the conditions that would kill it. He never divulged just how to bring it to life, but the monkeys knew enough to get the job done, and were contented with their lesson. They parted ways in haste, but not before the monkeys could give her directions out of the labyrinth, and the final piece of advice. This gauntlet gives advantage to the pursuer. That is the nature of its contest. Step sure after the Paupau, but know that the same path does not always lead opponents to the same place. If you are still in the gauntlet when you meet with the beast, lead it forward. Do not try to retrace your steps. With any luck, you will both end up where your journey here began. I will do my best, and don't trust the weight of the many-pawed, added Right Face. It is far heavier wet, dry than wet. Thank you, said the wielder appreciatively. Now, go make up preparations. We have a Paupau to catch. The monkeys disappeared, and Khelreesh followed their winding directions, eventually finding her way into the cliffside itself. After minutes of feeling her way through the darkness, always along the right side except for the first turn, she emerged from behind the shrub into cloudy light. Skimming between the boulders of a clouded vein, she eventually made her way back into the main canyon. A few minutes jog onward, she was facing the many mud pit that was promised.
I just think that's a good start.
Yeah, good place to start. Ooh, so dramatic. And I love the voices, and our floor director back here really loved Khelreesh's voice. She gave a little clap.
You know what, floor director here, I suggest that for future readings and when you release this, tell people to listen with their eyes closed, because he paints a mental picture. Listening with my eyes open and making sure everything looked good was okay, but listening with my eyes closed was fabulous.
It really creates a whole world.
I do like that idea. Might be not the best advice if this is an audiobook, at least for me. Just I like to listen to audiobooks in the car, and best to keep your eyes open. But yeah, if you're listening at home, not operating heavy machinery.
Yeah, I was about to say. No heavy machinery, no knives. Probably not the best to do while cooking. Closing your eyes, but...
Exactly. But yeah, no, I like that for sure.
Yeah, that was terrific. We'll have to read the second half of that, because there's all sorts of more adventures left with Khelreesh and all the...
Not done yet.
The critters she's gonna...
Paupau prevail, or will Khelreesh come out on top?
Go Khelreesh! Yeah, so we'll be reading the rest of that probably next Friday. Maybe the Friday after that. We'll have to check schedules and see. And on Wednesday, we're going to keep reading from Finding the Lost. So join us Wednesday at noon, and we'll let you know when we'll be finishing What Goes Unseen and Other Tales from Afar when we finish Girl on the Mountain. But thanks for joining us, Sean. That was such a great reading.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see all of you next time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.